it's Kayla, and finally I am back with another video. I promise you guys I have a lot of ideas and I am committed to making these videos. It just may take me a while in between because, as you can imagine, my little one keeps me pretty busy and I don't have a ton of free time to make these videos. But here I am, as promised. In my last video, I talked about breastfeeding and pumping as a blind mom. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about bottle feeding and formula feeding as a blind mom. And you know, even if you are a breastfeeding mom, there could likely come a point in time where you are also bottle feeding, whether you're bottle feeding pumped milk or otherwise. So anyways, just wanted to make this video to talk about how I bottle feed my baby, how we do formula, different strategies for measuring out formula and all of that jazz. So let's jump in. So I'm gonna start off by talking about just like physically feeding the baby with the bottle. So first thing is positioning. So something that is recommended nowadays, which is just kind of like a blanket recommendation, this isn't specific for blind moms, but definitely helpful for blind moms, is paced bottle feeding, which is holding the bottle horizontally to the baby's mouth so that they are kind of in more control of the milk that they are drawing out versus having baby on their back and the bottle like pointed down into their mouth where you're just kind of like pouring the milk into their mouth. It's harder for them to kind of know when they're done eating, probably harder for you to know when they are done eating too. And also the paced bottle feeding just like slows them down. It also more like mimics breastfeeding. So for someone who's like breastfeeding and bottle feeding, anyways, if you want to know more about paced bottle feeding, you can look into that. So what I started out doing when my baby was little, I probably did this for the first 3, maybe even 4 months, which is I had her laying on her side across my lap. So trying to like describe how this positioning was. Her booty was probably close to like sitting on my leg, probably close to like my right hip, and then she'd be like a little bit diagonal to where her head would be, like mid thigh on my left leg. So essentially she was laying on her side, kind of diagonal on my legs. And then I would, hold the bottle and feed her that way. So the bottle again was like horizontal to her mouth. And this was a really good position because since she was laying on my lap, I was not holding her, which is really nice. When you hold your baby all day long and you feed them 8 times a day, not like holding them and getting a break for your arms is nice. So I would kind of like support her head with one hand and then be obviously holding the bottle with the other hand. But that worked really well. And then when she got a bit bigger, so probably around like the 4-month mark, now I feed her. She's essentially just like sitting up. She's sitting on my lap, like facing forward. So her back is like along my torso. So I've got my baby doll. She is reprising her role from the swaddle video. So she'll kind of like, for those of you who can see in this kind of position. And so she is like sitting upright. And then again, I've got the bottle horizontal, to her mouth. So that is the positioning I use to feed. I use, I'll show you and kind of explain how I hold the bottle. When I hold the bottle, I hold it like really kind of close to the nipple, like where the nipple ring is. And then I kind of have my, I have my pinky kind of gently resting on kind of like the corner of her mouth a little bit, if you can kind of see how this positioning is. And so that helps me with a couple things. One, to know like to aim the bottle in her mouth. She usually opens her mouth and lunges towards it, so she makes it pretty easy. But I do kind of have that like touch point to make sure I'm getting it in the right spot and not, putting the nipple in her eye, which, I may or may not have done once or twice. So I do that, but also having my pinky like resting at the corner of her mouth Helps me to know that the bottle is still in her mouth. And also, I can kind of feel her drinking patterns. So I can feel if she is like taking like really long, deep sucks and she's actually sucking out the milk, or if she's kind of just like suckling on the bottle like it's a pacifier. So that just helps me get some extra like tactile feedback. It also is more helpful for me to, I feel like, hold the bottle steady if I'm holding it with my hand like closer to her face versus holding the bottle out here by the end. I just like, I don't know. I don't feel like I have a lot of control. And this is also how I like hold my utensils too. I hold them like very close to the thing because I don't know. It helps me find my way around. So back to the pace bottle feeding, I think it is really helpful for me to, not be feeding baby on her back with the bottle just pointed down into her mouth, because I always worried about that, of like giving her too much too fast. Like before I had her, that was a worry of mine of bottle feeding. And so that really cuts out that worry. But there was still a little bit of a learning curve because I couldn't really see the milk and like how much it was like filling in the nipple. It's also really hard when you're blind to know when something is completely level. So I may think I'm holding it horizontal, but it could be angled up or down, just because it's just really hard to know if something's level when you can't see, because sometimes it feels level when it's not. So I did these kind of like practice sessions with Ethan where I would feed her and I would like listen really closely, and he would tell me, okay, she's not really getting anything, or she's getting way too much, or okay, that's a good spot. And so I would kind of listen to know what those different sounds were, because it would sound different if she wasn't really getting any milk out versus when it was flowing pretty evenly versus when it was flowing too much. So I got the hang of listening to that. And so that's what I continue to use. I don't have to listen as closely anymore. Kind of practice makes perfect. And then also, getting that tactile feedback with holding my fingers so I can feel her sucking also is helpful. And then when I think that she's done, usually it'll start making this like very airy sucking sound. That's usually when I know that she's done. But just to make sure, I'll pop it out of her mouth and I'll kind of like shake it by my ear to tell if there is still liquid in there or not, just to make sure that, she ate it all. So a small note that I have about bottles, I mean, there are tons of different bottles that have different kind of like anti-colic mechanisms and all of that stuff. There are some that have a little, I don't know, mechanism on the inside of the bottle that's like a certain bottle part that has to be facing upward in order for it to work how it's intended. And we had one of those, I think it was like the Philips Advent bottle or something like that. And those were hard for me to like make sure that the part that was supposed to be facing up was facing up, because it was on the inside of the bottle when it was assembled, and so I couldn't really tell. So keep that in mind when you are buying bottles. We have these. They are Tommy Tippy bottles. They're pretty basic, just bottle, ring, nipple, cap. Those are all the parts. So I like that it's simple. So now let's talk about what goes in the bottle, the milk. So I'm going to kind of like start with what we're doing currently and then work backwards to what we were doing in the beginning, just because in case you don't have time to watch this whole video, I need to put the most important thing first, which is the baby Brezza, which essentially is like a Keurig for formula. It is the most convenient thing ever. It is expensive, and I wish I could tell you. I should have looked it up before I started filming how much it is. I'm going to guess it's around $200. It maybe was a little more, it maybe was a little less. I honestly don't remember. I'm going to ballpark it at $200, but it was worth every single penny. I would pay $300, $400, $500 for it, maybe. It is so convenient. You literally just press a button and voila, there is your bottle of formula. And I'm actually going to show you guys and do a little demonstration. All right, so this is the baby Brezza, or the baby Keurig as we call it. So You just put your powder formula in here, you put your water back here, and it mixes it together for you. So it has tactile buttons. Now this is not like accessible, as in it's not going to talk to you, but at least the buttons are tactile. So you'll probably need sighted assistance to set it up, because there's a certain setting that you have to put it on for whatever type of formula you use. But you only have to do that once. You don't have to redo it unless you change your type of formula. So I don't even mess with those buttons at all. I usually just leave it on the same settings. So over on the right side, you've got on, start, which makes the bottle, and then your number of ounces. So right now it's set to 5. That's what she drinks. So I just leave it. I don't even change the ounces. But if I needed to, it does ounces 2 through 10. So you can just count. So if I wanted to do 6, I'd just turn it up 1. If I wanted to do 4, I'd count 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 2, 3, 4. And I'll put it back to 5. So, and then you have a button over here to the left of the screen that does the temperature. So you can do it at room temperature, warm, or warmer. I don't know. We just have it set to warm. So like I said, I don't even touch that. I leave it on the same settings. And once you turn it on, it takes a little bit to warm up, and it'll beep when it's done warming. So that is a nice audible cue. So I'm just waiting for it to warm right now. The only gripe I have about this is that it only does 2 through 10 ounces. So you can't do a ½ ounce. If you wanted to do 5.5 ounces, you can't. So we would do, when she would be at a ½ ounce, we'd just like rotate between 5 and 6 ounces. So 5 ounces one bottle, 6 ounces the other bottle. Oh, that means it's ready. So that's how we would do, kind of work around doing a ½ ounce. And then I also don't like that you can't do 1 ounce, because if your baby finishes the bottle and they seem like they're still a little hungry and you want to do like a 1 ounce top off, you can't do 1. The least you can do is 2. But like I said, very, very minor complaints overall. It's really helpful. Where's the bottle? Okay, so it's ready. So I'm just gonna put the bottle under this funnel and press start. And it's ready. So as you can see, it took like 10 seconds to make the bottle, and it only takes, I don't know, a minute or 2 to heat up. So turn it off. Super easy. So that is the Baby Brezza, a true lifesaver. But before we were using the Brezza, I will tell you about kind of what our process was, just in case you don't want a Baby Brezza or can't afford it, or you're just like bottle feeding occasionally, so you maybe don't really need to make that kind of investment. So when we first started bottle feeding, I was bottle feeding pumped breast milk. And so I did have a problem with measuring it, because I think we were feeding like 3 ounces, which was not a exact measurement in cups. I think it's like 3/8 of a cup or something. So I didn't really have a good measuring apparatus to make sure that it was accurate. I also, usually when I am kind of pouring a liquid and wanting to know how much I'm filling up, I'll stick my finger in it. I was paranoid about it being like sterile, and I didn't want to stick my fingers in it. And I tried a few different things. I tried these like little coffee creamer pitchers, because they were small and they held about 3 ounces. So I would kind of pour it in there and then pour it into the bottle. I would sometimes lose some during transfer. So I found that to be difficult. So what we did is Ethan would just pour the bottles for me. So he would take the bag of breast milk, pour it into the bottles for the day. And so I could just grab one out of the refrigerator and then warm it up. So that's what we did. It was really convenient to do it that way. Some other blind-friendly options. A lot of people recommended getting a talking kitchen scale. So then you can zero out the bottle. So let's say your bottle weighs 1 ounce, and you know that. Then when you pour in the liquid, if you want a 3 ounce bottle, put it on the scale. When it's 4 ounces, that's how you know how much liquid is in the bottle. So you can get a talking kitchen scale to do it that way. There's also people who do what's called the pitcher method. So you can either put pumped breast milk into a pitcher or make a batch of, like a big batch of formula in the morning to put in the pitcher, and then you can pour out bottles, or you can have your spouse or any kind of sighted helper pour that pitcher into pre-measured bottles, so then you can just grab one. I think that would be a lot easier than like pouring the water and scooping the formula for each single bottle. That sounds horrible. Like that sounds like such a big like time suck. So I think any of those methods could be good. I definitely, if we didn't have the Brezza, would probably use the pitcher method. So in between, when we stopped giving her pumped breast milk in the bottle and before we started using the Brezza, we used ready to feed formula, which is just like pre-made formula. It's just in a bottle, it's ready to go. So we did that because it is recommended to mix powdered formula with boiled water for the first, I think it's 2 months of a baby's life, for it to be sterile. Now, and then when she turned 2 months, we were able to just use the Brezza with distilled water. That's what our pediatrician told us anyways. But before that, who wants to boil water 8 times a day to make your formula? Also, I think that is a good time where like the pitcher method comes in handy, because you can just like, boil your pot for the day and do the pitcher. But like nobody has time to boil water to make the bottle 8 times a day. I also did not really trust myself, because it is important to be precise when mixing powdered formula with like your amount of powder and your amount of water. I just didn't really feel confident in being precise. I was also a very anxious new mom that just like wanted to make sure that I got it right. So we used ready to feed formula. It is sterile, so I felt better about that it was safe. It was also so easy. You just grab it out of the cabinet. It's ready to go. No mixing, no time, no nothing. And so these come in, I think it's like 2, 4, 8 ounce bottles, or you can get like a big jug. So kind of similar to the pitcher method, you can do a big jug of ready to feed formula. I think also with the smaller bottles, the 2, 4, 8 ounce, you can put a nipple right on that and feed them from that. Or you can pour that into a bottle. So that's what we used. It was really super convenient. It was easy. I wasn't having to mix anything. If they're eating just 2 or just 4 ounces, that's really convenient because you don't have to measure. If they're eating 3 ounces, which she was, then there was still measuring involved. So we still had Ethan pre-fill the bottles. But super recommend ready to feed formula, especially for that, those first 2 months, because it's sterile. They're also really easy for on the go. You can just like throw them in the diaper bag, because there were sometimes where we would be out and we weren't really sure how long we would be out or if she would get hungry while we were out. And so we would just throw those in the diaper bag, and that would be really easy. Okay, so the last thing I want to mention is about washing bottles. So we have this little, I don't even know what to call it, like a basin kind of thing that goes in the kitchen sink. It's kind of like this like square-ish bucket that's like plasticky silicone material. I'm not even sure. And has a little drain in the bottom. So it goes in your sink to wash bottles in, so that you're not putting your baby bottles in like your dirty kitchen sink. But what makes it so convenient is we have it sitting next to the sink all day. So after we use a bottle and it's dirty, we just stick it in that little bucket, and it contains all the bottles until we are ready to wash them all at the end of every day. So this is super convenient, so that there are not empty bottles just sitting on the counter for me to knock over, because every blind person knows that any kind of empty bottle or can or cup is prime for knocking it over because they topple so easily. So having all of the empty bottles that are dirty collected in this little bucket so I can't topple them over is very convenient. And then similarly, after we wash the bottles, we do have a bottle sanitizer. And I don't even know, my daughter is almost 6 months old now. I don't know if we even still need to be sanitizing bottles, but we do because it sanitizes them and it dries them. And again, they are contained rather than being on some kind of drying rack for me to just knock over. So I think that is what works best for me. So anyways, I guess that is a wrap. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to ask those in the comments. As always, if you have any tips or advice that you want to share with the community on this topic, please leave those in the comments. I always want that to be a resource for even more information because I don't know everything and I don't have the answers. So always feel free to share your advice with other people and let me know if you have any ideas for future videos, and I will see you guys next time.